Johnson's here.
And for this ethical discussion, we talked about Volkswagen and their emissions scandal and what they did and how unethical they are. So I'm going to start off with their mission statement. So their mission statement states that our products help ensure that mobility is environmentally friendly, efficient, and safe. In this context, the future obligates us to promote mobility in the interest of the common good while doing justice to individual needs, ecological concerns, and the economic requirements placed on the global enterprise. So what this means is their mission statement is their overall goal as a company to provide for their consumers. And their number one goal was to be the number one manufacturer and make superior quality possible. And then to do this, they had to act responsibly for the benefit of their customers and act in accordance with their declarations and take responsibility for the actions. So what Volkswagen did was on September 18, 2015, when this did come to light, Volkswagen had a software in their computer that when in the car that when they would go through emission testing, it would automatically pass the emission test because of the software that they enabled into this piece of equipment. And then after this is a video that will explain what that piece was. Also, this resulted in the engines emitting nitrogen oxide, which pollutes up to 40 times more than what is actually allowed in the United States.
Last Friday, the EPA announced that some Volkswagen and Audi cars made between 2009 and this year were using a so-called defeat device to get around emissions laws designed to keep the air clean. But what does that mean exactly? Well, modern cars have dozens of computers inside them, and some of those computers help coordinate the functions of the engine for optimal performance while making sure that there isn't too much garbage coming out of the exhaust pipe. They've actually been working this way for several decades now. Basically, every part of a modern car's engine has a sensor or controller on it, and these computers are reading in data thousands of times per second, making adjustments like the ratio of fuel to air that's going into the cylinders. These cheating Volkswagen and Audi models are diesels, and diesels have one more really important computer-controlled parameter, which is the amount of unburned fuel going into the exhaust. Now that sounds bad. It doesn't sound like you would want unburned fuel going into the exhaust. But in the case of a diesel, you have something called a NOx trap, which is a device that absorbs and traps nitrogen oxides that are pollutants that would otherwise go into the atmosphere. And the effect of that NOx trap is enhanced with unburned fuel. So a defeat device is a special program inside these computers that can make it look like the car meets emission standards even when it doesn't. Volkswagen had a problem on its hands. Its diesel engines were known for getting great fuel economy, but the NOx trap only works well when more fuel is being used. So the car would detect, using this defeat device, when it was getting an emissions test. It would use more fuel, make the NOx trap work well, emissions would be fine, but then you get on the road, the device turns off, you're burning less fuel, but you're putting as much as 40 times more pollutants into the atmosphere. But how the heck did the car know that it was being tested for emissions compliance? The EPA says it was a sophisticated system that checked things like steering wheel position, speed, how long the engine was on, and even the atmospheric pressure. In other words, there was no way this was accidental because the software was designed very carefully to detect an official emissions test. That's some pretty serious deception, and that's why Volkswagen is in such serious trouble. In fact, their CEO, Martin Winterkorn, just stepped down. So what happens next? Well, if you own one of the 500,000 diesel Jettas, Beetles, Golfs, Passats, or Audi A3s affected, the good news is that your car is still safe to drive. You don't have to put it away until Volkswagen issues a recall. But at some point, they're probably going to have to update the software inside your car. And when that happens, you might get fewer miles per tank. Lawyers are already gearing up for class action lawsuits, so owners might get compensated at some point in the future. But that's not going to happen anytime soon.
So, since I'm not a mechanic, I think that was a great video to explain exactly what Volkswagen did to beat out the system with emission testing, and just that since they knew about it to create this device, how ethical it was. Okay, so diesel is becoming more popular now with the cars and how they impact the environment. So one, they get more miles to the gallon, so you don't have to fill up as much. They're more efficient and energy dense fuel that is available today. They don't require any spark plugs or distributors, so that means there's no need for engine tune-ups. And they go much longer before needing major repairs. And the last benefit is because of the way it burns fuel, a diesel engine provides far more torque, so therefore it is a lot faster than a regular petroleum gas car.
How Volkswagen got caught in their scandal. They got caught because the International Council of Clean Transportation hired West Virginia University researchers to do standard emission tests on U.S. diesel cars. And during the test, they learned that Volkswagen's claim of having low emissions were a lie, and used it as a defeat device to make people believe their cars were very fuel efficient and had low emissions when they really didn't. When West Virginia realized that this was going on, they reported their findings to the EPA. How the scandal immediately affected their stock. Shares of Volkswagen plunged nearly 30% a week since their violation of Clean Air Act surfaced. They also took a $18 billion charge for the emissions test scandal as a fine. And this chart shows you the whole timeline of how everything happened. EPA first announces fines against Volkswagen, says it cheated on emissions tests, and then a couple of days later, Volkswagen halts sale of certain diesel vehicles and stocks down 15 points by Monday. And then later on, Volkswagen confirms 11 million diesel cars worldwide include defeat device software that help to cheat people and make them believe they have low emissions. And you can see that their stock drastically decreased and kept decreasing. How the scandal affected Volkswagen. The emission scandal really affected how people viewed Volkswagen as a company. They didn't believe they were a trustworthy company anymore. It made them seem dishonest and willing to do anything to get ahead and make more money, even though they had to lie. It was a huge hit to their reputation as an organization, and they're still dealing with the backlashes of the scandal.
And so the way that the scandal came out was there was a whistleblower inside of Volkswagen that actually went out to the media and told them about the defeat device that they were using inside of most of their cars. And just as an explanation, a whistleblower is basically someone who informs either a person or an organization about any illicit activities that's going on inside of another organization or perpetrated by another person. And these are just a couple famous whistleblowers, just to familiarize yourselves with them. There's Edward Snowden, who everyone really already knows about. Mark Felt was actually part of the Watergate scandal. He was the guy who's known as Deep Throat. That was him. And Linda Tripp was part of the Monica Lewinsky scandal with Bill Clinton. So the Sarbanes-Oxley Act has to do with a lot of laws that protect whistleblowers, because the government obviously wants people to come forward if someone's doing something illegal, just to keep everything fair in the market. So there are 4 major steps to protect them. First one is all publicly traded companies need to set up an independent audit committee and procedures for whistleblowers to report problems. So basically that just means like they need to have a way for whistleblowers to come forward anonymously to report any kind of misconduct that's going on. The second is set ethical standards for attorneys to blow the whistle on their own employees or employers. That's basically self-explanatory. It's just saying that they need to do the same thing as they did in step 1, except they have to do it for their attorneys and make sure that the attorneys don't face any kind of repercussions from it. They criminalize retaliation against whistleblowers, which means that if you blow the whistle, you don't have to worry about any kind of backlash from your former employer. And it allows the SEC to fully prosecute anyone in violation of the provisions to protect whistleblowers to the fullest extent of the law, which basically just means like if you do perpetrate rule number 3 and you do have any kind of repercussions to go with these whistleblowers, you're going to be persecuted to the full extent of the law. All right, so Volkswagen's remedies. There are a lot of things that were floating around that they said they were going to do. This was one of the more extravagant things that I think they would have done. There are rumors that Volkswagen would have withdrawn from the American market, focused on the German automobile market, which basically means after the scandal, their reputation was so tattered that they didn't want to keep producing cars in the United States because of this, big problem. So they were just going to completely stop with their, regular model line cars like the Passat, the Volkswagen Golf, and all that stuff, and just focus on German automobile markets with the same cars, I'm assuming. And then they wanted to end up just manufacturing higher end cars in the United States, just to keep their presence in the United States around. I have a couple of examples here, cars that Volkswagen were looking to produce that are anywhere from, $1.5 million to $2 million.
So just to add on to what he's saying, there's a settlement that's going involved with Volkswagen that, for those of them who own Volkswagen and this happened to, so anybody from 2009, 2014, which I fall into that category, I own a Jetta, but you get $5,000 over Kelley Blue Book value for your trade-in, so at least you can get another car. So Volkswagen violated their code of ethics. So every company has a code of ethics, just to explain to them the proper procedures that every employee should follow. And generally, just respectful to management, employees, workers, clients, typical things like that. But there is two in here that did catch me off guard. And one of them was the treatment of information and secrecy. So it stated that each of the employees is obligated to maintain secrecy regarding the business and trade secrets, which I think if something is going on like this, how can you have something ethical in there where if it is secrets like this, it's unethical? So it's just contradicting itself. And then the main one, which is the environmental protection one, and said they develop and produce and distribute automobiles around the world to preserve individual mobility, which they bear responsibility for continuous improvement of the environment. And they have to ensure that their activities have only as limited as influence on the environment as possible. So by defeating the emissions test, they've actually are hurting the environment by having that nitrous oxide produce 40 times more than it should, which again is hurting the environment, and we're already going through climate change and the greenhouse effect. So the question is yours, would you continue to buy Volkswagen?